Hi guys, I'm Nick Jenzen-Jones, the Director of Research with Headstamp Publishing, and I'm here with László Becz, the author of our latest book, Rifles on the Danube. László, why don't you tell me a little bit about the book? Why did you write it? What is it about?
Well, this book is about the Hungarian-made RK pattern rifles, which started after the Soviet occupation in Hungary and doing till the earliest 20s, you know. And those guns are quite special because they are not follow the 100% for the Soviet AK style, you know.
Right.
The Hungarian engineers, they want to develop their own style, which are a bit different than the Soviet ones. They want to produce the gun much cheaper to be able to move to the export markets with a quite cheaper gun than the Soviet ones, you know, because at the time the Soviet guns are ruled the most of the world because they can produce it quite cheaper way.
Right. So you've got unique weapons coming out of Hungary, some which people are going to be familiar with, of course, AMD-65, AMP, that sort of thing. And then you've got this two-track development you talk about where it's partially driven by the needs of the Hungarian army and partially driven by the needs for export to make a unique product in the market.
So that's right. So that was the basic way which not just the engineers in the factory but the political decision makers want to follow, you know.
Right.
To be able to develop a new gun, it's quite a bit pricey, you know. You need to doing a lot of tests.
Sure.
They need to, especially in Hungary, because previously we followed the German standards, we used German technologies. It was the quick changes, and
so after the Second World War,
after Second World War, we need to move to these Soviet standards.
So the book covers all of that, everything from the first copies of the AK,
the first copies till
the
end of the AK era.
And there's some history about the factory, there's geopolitical history, there's all the different guns discussed in detail.
All of the technology
markings,
details,
accessories, rifle grenades, magazines.
Yeah.
Why did you write the book?
Because you know, I was in the army, and when I was retired from the army in 2004, I started collecting guns, you know. And I did not be able to find any proper information, even a book about the factory.
Even in Hungarian?
Even in Hungarian.
Right.
Not even in the archives, because at this time most of the archive contacts was still classified.
So this is not only an important book for the English-speaking world, because of course it's the first detailed book on Hungarian AK rifles in English, but also an important book for Hungarians as well.
That's right. Yeah, that's right, because a lot of archive documents was never ever checked. So we have a good index at the end of the book where all of the experts, all of the researchers, even Hungarian ones, could have a good point of view where they could pick up the point.
So document numbers, references for archives, secondary sources, interviews,
personal interviews. Yeah. Who was the charge when those weapons are made? Who's the key person who could have valuable information for any aspect of those guns, you know.
And you've been working on this for nearly 20 years?
Yeah, nearly 20 years.
Okay, so there's a lot of work in this book.
Yeah, I started to collect information in my army career, but heavily in 2004.
Okay.
And it was still in 2019.
Okay.
2019, so it was 15 years in the net.
Plus a couple on.
Plus a couple, yeah.
Army, yeah.
So I need 15 years to find some contacts, find some evidences, able to go in the archives, because it is a quite long process. Without a collector permit, you cannot grant access to the archives.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, that's
right.
And so it is not well organized. So if you somebody outside of the Hungarian weapon community want to search against something, they lost, because all of our things are in Hungarian. So in our book is in our books are help them to identify the key points, and if they want to check something, they cannot do that because they have the Hungarian references here.
Right. So let's talk about that's a great point. Let's talk about who this book is for. Who's going to enjoy this book? I mean, obviously, if people own an AK made in Hungary, it's critical reading, right? It's got serial number tables, it's got years of production, it's got markings you can check, all the physical features. What if you're a general enthusiast? Is there an interesting narrative? Is there a good story in the book?
Yeah, we have a lot of good stories, especially from the first era when those AK partner rifles were started to manufacture in Hungary. we have a lot of unique markings, we have unique stories, we have a lot of forgotten developments which was never ever published.
I mean, by way of reference, I would consider myself a fairly knowledgeable person with relation to AK patent weapons. I've published on AK patent weapons from different countries. I've tracked some that aren't known in the English-speaking world, for example. This book, in terms of level of detail, blew me away with the amount of information about specifically Hungarian AKs. There was a lot of stuff in there I'd never seen anywhere before. There was a lot of myths that we have in the West that have been corrected in this book. Yep. There are a lot of things we discuss in the English-speaking collectors world that have a grain of truth, but we don't really know where they came from, or we don't really know the origins of the stories that we share. So I think this book for me really unpacked a lot of that. Yeah. Was that a goal when you set out? Did you're familiar with some of the English-speaking world's current discussion on Hungarian AKs, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's correct. So as you already mentioned, this book was important from all aspects, especially for the future researchers, because, for example, if somebody found some gun in for example, Eastern, for example, Syria, Iraq, whatever, as happened today.
Still happens all the time.
It still happens. They clearly could be identified where this gun came from.
Right. So I mean, people might know me from some of my other work, which involves working in conflict zones and looking at conflict zones, and we see Hungarian weapons still turn up today, and the level of knowledge that's there to classify them and define them correctly is a little bit weak. So I think that helps with that. Yeah. So we're talking about collectors, researchers, academics, technical specialists, curators probably,
as well as the general weapon
and then enthusiasts.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. All right. So a lot of coverage. Let's shift now. Again, we talked about content a a bit about the history of the factory, the FEG factory, FEG in English. Yeah. That's got its own unique history. It deserved its own chapter in the book.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about? It seems like, if I understand correctly, you weren't originally intending to write a whole history of the factory, but it sort of unfolded naturally. What happened there?
Okay, so the FEG factory was a quite old factory, established after the Austrian-Hungarian monarchy was break down, and Hungary got their own independence, especially in the weapon factories.
This is 1868?
1868, right? Yeah. Since then, they have a political decision. Hungary need to have an independent gun factory. So
it's still part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. It's still under the same emperor, but it now is an independent country able to produce its own weapons.
Yeah. Okay. But it was not so easy because of the economical things. They need to find the right way and find the sources who could able to sponsor these things. Right. And after a short time of period, they established the new first independent Hungarian gun making company in Budapest, in the Soroksári Street, where later the FEG factory was worked. So it is the same place, same building.
And it does get complicated because then you have different companies with the same initials, right? But they're not the same name. Yes. Is that correct? And I'm not going to try and butcher the Hungarian, but why don't you tell us, what is FEG? What does that stand for in the most recent iteration?
FEG was in Hungarian Fegyver és Gépgyár, that's mean in English, Weapon and Gas Appliances Factory.
Weapon and Gas Appliances Factory.
Appliances. Okay. This is because in the socialist era,
very normal in Soviet factories, Soviet era factories, right? Yeah.
So in Hungary we had no separated arms military industry like the Soviet Union. Yeah. So we have every company need to produce some standard goods beside the weapons.
And we see this in Bulgaria, we see this in Poland, where they're making weapons, but also automotive parts.
Yeah, that's right.
Household appliances, that kind of thing.
So the FEG need to produce gas besides some gas appliances, gas reductors, convectors, or heaters, or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. And during the period of the factory's history, so it's established, it changes a few times in terms of its structure and its footprint. I know the book goes into a lot of detail. There's some great photographs and so on. But it sort of stabilizes, I guess, during the Soviet era for the most part. What's its trajectory look like during the Soviet era? What are its main points of change?
Main points of change is just when the first AK-55 started to produce.
Right. And that's a straight Soviet copy of the AK?
Yeah, Soviet copy. Yep. Then the AKM-63 in 1963, when the Hungarian military and political leadership want to create something which was cheap, because the AK-55 its producing time was quite expensive for Hungary, at least twice. The price was twice higher than if we could buy it directly from Soviet
Union. So this is moving from forged, milled receivers
forged
towards stamped AKM style.
Yeah, that's right.
And so you're saying at the point, if I understand correctly, at this point it was cheaper for Hungary to import an AKM than it was to produce an AK-55.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, they need to change that. Yeah.
So we have a factory, we have workers, we have engineers. We already produce some guns.
Right.
With a small changes, we could produce the more cheaper, which we could sell it on the export market.
So this is back to the two-track thing, right? Okay. So part of it's about supplying the Hungarian military and also the People's Militia and some of the gendarmerie type units.
Police forces, you know.
And then that's one side, and the other side is producing for export.
Yeah.
And I guess in both cases you want a cheaper product.
Yeah.
But I think also this explains, I think, for some people, some of the unusual Hungarian designs. They're competing in the export market with the Soviet AKM, right? So they can't create a straight copy. Is that right?
It's right, because based on the Russian patents which we got, they have some appendix. We cannot able to produce direct copies. We need to make some changes.
Interesting. So it's actually mandated in the contract.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Starting from AK-64.
Okay, right. And so Hungary's now both got a legal obligation and also an economic incentive to make something different.
Yeah.
What comes out of the factory that's different? What are the I mean, this is where we're talking about weapons people are familiar with, probably AMD 65, AMP, this sort of thing. What makes them uniquely Hungarian?
Unique Hungarian is the way where those weapons are born, especially because mostly all of those guns are designed by one or two people.
Okay.
We have not so many engineers.
The massive engineering bureaus.
Yeah, we have no. So we need to have a lot of tests, a lot of drawings, hand drawings. I saw an engineer's notebook from the 60s, 70s. All things need to be writing down in their books, and they're thinking out of the box how we can do that without any testing equipment. For example, they need to create 10 different parts with different harness. They put into the gun.
Oh, interesting.
Shooting test works.
So they're not testing it in a sort of laboratory style setting. No, they're physically testing things in the guns. That's really interesting.
So they follow the old way.
Okay.
For example,
and we're talking
AMD 65 buttstock, which was a quite it's a wire buttstock. It was broken. So during the development, it was broken several times until they found the right angle for that wire, the components, how they could fit to the butt plate. You know.
So part of so we're talking about. It's just really interesting to understand the driving factors here. We've got economic. We've got the kind of competitiveness factor of not wanting to compete with the Soviet Union products, and then also just limitations on both economic limitations, but also manpower.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's a much smaller country. Hungary at that time, a fraction of the population of the USSR.
Yeah.
Right. And as you say, without the big design bureaus, without the big teams, mostly individual engineers. Is it fair to say that characterizes most of Hungarian small arms development through history? I mean, there's a lot of innovative designs that come out of Hungary, and they mostly seem to be individuals rather than teams.
Not really. So it is not well documented like the Soviet and the Western development. So we had, for example, we had no team photos. We don't know anything.
Okay. So you might have had supporting members of the teams you just don't know about.
We don't know. We have only two sources, the archives, which was at the time, they are not archived so much document, just the important ones. For example, serial numbers list, export documentation, technology package, but not they are not documented the whole development process. We have only one sources, the engineers and factory workers, their personal notes, personal diaries. During the interview, I focused on this. They try to find their own 30 or 40 years old notes, and we day by day, pages by pages, we need to check the real history, you know, because it's never ever documented those things.
Okay, I mean it's a bit of a detour, but you've mentioned it, and I'm very interested. How did you go about finding people to interview, and how forthcoming were they? Were people happy to share with you?
I have a lot of contacts from my army career as well as my collector career, so I know a lot of key people. Often, especially in the early 20s, we have some at least monthly gathering where all collectors try to find a new parts for their guns, you know.
Yeah.
And I asking people, do you know somebody who have some connection with the FEG or work it? Okay, I come. Yeah, I established some personal interviews with them. I traveled a lot in Hungary because those persons are across the other region.
And you were saying some of them have left the country, right?
And this is much before the internet, you know. We have no Facebook at this time, you know. We have most of the people have even no emails, no phones. So you need to go to their village, ask somebody lives somebody, go here. If you're lucky, it's at home. You need to ask, okay, you are eager to do an interview. I'm an unknown man, but I'm very friendly. So it is a lot of time which I need to do those interviews. And after, you know, somebody start talking, we have some notes, other people came out, we try to find them. As far as I remember, I performed 83 different interviews. Wow. 83 with 39 people.
Okay, wow, so, that's a lot. Gosh. And I mean, one of the things I love in the book too, there's short biographies of some of the key FEG engineers, stuff that you couldn't find anywhere in English.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about in Hungarian, but certainly in English you'd never find this. And not easily in a Google search in Hungarian for me. So being able to look through and find short biographies of these key engineers, I think is really, really fantastic.
Yeah.
Was that an intention, or is this just something that grew out of the process?
Well, it is intentional.
Okay. Yeah. So you had a pretty good plan for how you're going to conduct all these?
Yeah, that's right. So most high-ranking military officers know their people well.
Yeah.
So they have notes. So they know them. Even they have some of them still have a contact with them.
Okay.
So it's really easy if you find something.
Start at the top and
yeah.
Makes sense. Okay. So we've talked about archives.
Yeah.
We've talked about interviews.
Interviews.
How about other sources that are out there? What are the other data sources?
The problem is, you know, during the regime change in the early 19s, the FEG archives was stolen, not well maintained. So a lot of documents are just put to the basement.
Right. And there are still a lot missing.
Yeah.
We don't know where they are.
Because as I already mentioned, only the most important documents was archived.
Okay.
They have the Hungarian archives had no capacity to store all of the documents. So currently, as far as I remember, the FEG had 294 cubic meter documents, which is not the technical package, just the general documents.
Okay.
It was quite a lot.
Yeah.
And not categorized. So if you want to check something, you need to go up, put the box, need to check which documents contain the box.
So you spend a lot of time looking through archives.
And the problem is the Hungarian archives have some rules. So you could have one box per day.
Oh, good. Wonderful. Yeah, you'll be there for the rest of your life.
If you are not lucky, you have a box which
has nothing useful.
And you need to wait another day.
Oh, wow. Okay. And so, wow. All right. In terms of other sources, secondary sources, we talked about, you and I talked before about the books. There aren't a lot of books in Hungarian even that detail the subject, unfortunately.
We have zero.
Yeah, so that makes it a little tricky. So obviously this is an important book, as we say, in Hungarian and English. How about things like manuals? Original documentation from the period?
Yeah, it's also a bit tricky. So because not a lot of original manuals available, even in the Hungarian Military Institutes, because those manuals, when the gun was out of the service, was destroyed.
Okay.
This was my
So it's all finding collectors and
This was from 1993. This was my first book from my army career.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
fantastic.
Luckily,
he kept it. Yeah.
He kept it. Yeah. So, and also have the serial number. So all of them are tracked.
So you're trying to find what you've got. I mean, some are online as PDFs, I'm sure now, but you don't have as much original documentation as you'd like. Clearly.
My friend Zoltán Szörös, who's managing the Kalashnikov.hu, have a lot of online.
Who's written us a very generous forward to the book too, actually. Thank you, Zoltán.
So we try to find all Hungarian documentation, scan them and put in this site to help anybody who want to see.
And he's been a pretty close collaborator of yours throughout the process, right? He's doing a lot of the digital preservation.
Yeah.
All right. So there's a small group of people in Hungary, obviously, that I think Zoltán said he wanted to write this book, but he could never have done it. It was just such a big job.
Yeah, because
it's a long process.
It's a long process.
Yeah. All right. So that's the content and the sources. The final thing I wanted to talk about was just the impact. I mean, what's next? What do you want people to take away from this book? What do you hope happens when they get it? And what are you working on next?
Well, next is a lot of unknown part of this but the Hungarian pattern history is not came up at the moment because we have a lot of connection in Germany, in the US. Mm-hmm. A lot of small details are still behind the scenes. So I hope if somebody read this book, have some additional content.
They look at their weapon and say it doesn't quite match.
This is quite not match. It's quite new. Or also, for example, a lot of Hungarian weapon exported by the Kastner Inc. Tennessee from the US, and a lot of documents are not stolen. It's lost. They don't know where it is.
Right.
So it could be somebody
that would be
safe.
useful.
It's somebody
so the other side of the import equation, because most of the exported Hungarian civilian firearms or firearms for the civilian market that are still in hands of collectors today are going to be in the US, right? There'll be some in Europe, but for the most part, they'll probably be in the US. So there's probably some more information to be found on that side of the pond.
Yeah, approximately 178,000 AK pattern rifles exported to the US.
All right. Fantastic. Well, László, thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick.
And the book is right now live on Kickstarter. So if you haven't already, please head over to the link in the description and support the project. Thanks.
Thank you.